Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Batra, page 94a, top of the page, with the words Nose lo demei chitin. Must give him the value of wheat of equal volume to the pebble that he removed. Had he not removed the pebble, the owner would have sold his wheat together with the pebble, all for the price of wheat. Accordingly, the removal of the pebble effectively caused the owner a small loss. It is apparent from this ruling that when selling produce, a buyer accepts upon himself that a quantity of dirt may be mixed in. Kitnes, rova, afrafruris, pachos mirova. The Gemara answers, with regard to legumes, one accepts a quarter kav per sa'ah, but with regard to dirt, he accepts less than a quarter kav. V'afruris rova lo, v'atanya hamoich raperes chaveroi, chit mekabel olav roi v'kitnis so'o, se'oiri mekabel olav roi v'nishovas liso'o, adoshim mekabel olav roi v'afruris liso'o. And is so that he does not accept a quarter kav of dirt? But isn't it taught in a Braita with regard to one who sells produce to another? If he sells him wheat, the buyer accepts upon himself that a quarter kav of legumes may be present in each se'ah of wheat purchased. When purchasing barley, he accepts upon himself that a quarter kav of chaff may be present in each se'ah purchased. When purchasing lentils, he accepts upon himself that a quarter kav of dirt may be present in each se'ah purchased. My love, who adin chitim v'lese'oirin, shani adoshim demeikar akri lehu. The Gemara asks, what? Is it not that just as the Braita rules with regard to lentils, the same is true for wheat and for barley? The Gemara answers, no. Lentils are different because they are dug up from the ground and dirt can easily get mixed in. Lentils often contain a higher percentage of dirt than do wheat and barley, which are harvested rather than dug up. The Gemara suggests, but according to this, the only reason that a buyer accepts dirt may be present in lentils but not in wheat and barley is that lentils are dug up from the ground, whereas wheat and barley are not. If so, resolve the dilemma from this Braita and conclude that when purchasing wheat and barley, a buyer does not accept that a quarter kav of dirt may be present in each se'ah. Le'oilam chite u'se'ori mekabel afruris adoshim yitzrichale. Isal kedai dechamina kivan demekali krilu yoiser miroi v'anam el-kabel komash melon. The Gemara rejects this. Actually, perhaps when purchasing wheat and barley as well, a buyer accepts that a quarter kav of dirt may be present in each se'ah, but it was necessary for the Braita to state the halakha specifically with regard to lentils. This is because it might enter your mind. By the way, lentils equals adashim equals 424, which is the gematria of Mashiach ben David, when David is simply spelled Daled, Vav, Daled. If it's with a Yud, as it is in the Book of Chronicles, it's 434. This is because it might enter your mind to say that since lentils are dug up from the ground, the buyer would also accept even more than a quarter kav of dirt. Therefore, the Braita teaches us that this is not the case. The Gemara rejects it. Actually, perhaps when purchasing wheat and barley as well, a buyer accepts that a quarter kav of dirt may be present in each se'ah, but it was necessary for the Braita to state the halakha specifically. With regard to lentils, this is because it might enter your mind to say that since lentils are dug up from the ground, the buyer would also accept even more than a quarter kav of dirt. Therefore, the Braita teaches us that this is not the case. Amav hu no. Im Banapis Binapis Kuloi. Amri lo dina amri lo kenoso. Rav Huna says, if the buyer comes to sift the produce to check if there is more than the acceptable portion of impurities, and he finds that there is too much, he sifts all of it and returns all the impurities to the seller, and not just the amount in excess of a quarter kav per se'ah. The seller must instead provide produce that is free of any impurities. Some say that this is the strict halacha, and some say that this is a penalty. Amr ladina man diagzuza perish abiriahiv verov lo tarachinish inish yoter mirov tarachinish. The Gemara elaborates. Some say that this is the strict halacha, as one who gives money for produce gives it for good quality produce containing no impurities at all. Even so, where there is just a quarter kav of impurities per se'ah, a person will not take the trouble to sift the grain to remove the impurities. Instead, he accepts the small quantity of impurities that are present. By contrast, where there is more than a quarter kav of impurities per se'ah, a person will take the trouble to sift the grain to remove the impurities, and once he takes the trouble to sift the grain, he does not stop once he reduces the proportion of impurities to a quarter kav per se'ah. Rather, he takes the trouble to sift all of it. Accordingly, once he has sifted out the impurities, he never agrees to accept any quantity of impurities, and so the seller must take back all of the impurities. And some say is a penalty. They understand that it is usual for a quarter kav of impurities to be present in each se'ah of produce, and so it is presumed that a buyer accepts that quantity. More than a quarter kav is unusual, and consequently the seller is suspected of having deceitfully mixed additional impurities into the produce that he sold. And since the seller deceitfully mixed in impurities, the sages penalized him by requiring him to pay for all of the impurities present, even those which he did not add. And there's a siman. The siman is kol trei shitrei de rovin bar Rav Nachman ona'a v'kiblanuta. The Gemara presents a mnemonic for the cases it will cite. All two documents of Ravin bar Rav Nachman are exploitation and a contract. Meisvei kol so sheyesh ba'oeva mimina achir yemait zevro elav b'dichalaim ki yoisim v'dahav ha'chitani yemait. The Gemara raises an objection to Rav Huna's ruling from the Mishnah and Kalayim 2:1 with regard to any soft seeds that contains a quarter kav or more of seeds of a different kind. Before sowing such seeds, one must reduce the quantity of the other kind of seeds in the mixture so as not to violate the prohibition against growing a mixture of diverse kinds. See Leviticus 19:19. Siman is Dan. The Gemara explains it can be assumed that the presence of a quarter kav of seeds is a different kind per se'ah with regard to the prohibition of diverse kinds, as is problematic, as more than a quarter kav of impurities per se'ah with regard to a sale are discussed here, and therefore, since the Mishnah teaches with regard to diverse kinds, only that one must reduce the additional amount, but not that one is required to remove all the seeds of a different kind. It follows that the same is true in the case of a sale, and the seller should not have to take back all of the impurities. This contradicts Rav Huna's ruling. Lo, rova deklayim ki rova dehachadami. The Gemara deflects the challenge. No, this assumption is not necessarily correct. Perhaps the presence of a quarter kav of seeds of a different kind per se'ah with regard to diverse kinds is comparable to a quarter kav of impurities per se'ah with regard to a sale as discussed here, and both are considered acceptable levels of admixture. Ihachi amai yima'et mishum pumin deklayim. The Gemara asks, if it is so that a quarter cup of seeds is of a different kind per saw is acceptable, why does the Mishnah teach that one must reduce the quantity of seeds of a different kind? The Gemara answers the requirement is a rabbinic decree due to the severity of the prohibition of diverse kinds. Ihachi, the Gemara challenges the answer, if so.